G'day, Geoff Lewis here from Seriously Series, and welcome to a very special episode of Unique 4x4. We're here at the four-wheel drive adventure show in Sydney, and we're also chatting to some of our good friends at KLR Automotive. Now, they have a Land Rover that is the only one of its type in the world, and we're going to have an in-depth walk around and find out how they came into possession of this vehicle and why is it so special. So as always, you know exactly what to do. Sit back, relax, grab yourself a brew or something slightly stronger, but most importantly, stay tuned. Right, so this is a very special Land Rover here, and someone to take us around this is a man who knows a lot about this vehicle and more. This is our good friend Brad from KLR Automotive. Thanks for showing us around this awesome vehicle, Brad. So what are we actually looking at here?
Well, essentially what it is a concept long-range patrol vehicle that Jaguar Rover Australia, as it was known back in the 80s, built for predominantly the UK market, but I suspect they were also chasing sort of any military contract they could. Like they wanted to sell vehicles. Obviously by this stage, the JRA are already building the LRPV for the Australian military with the Isuzu turbo diesel. But obviously UK, Land Rover UK, wanted to use a homegrown engine.
So just a little bit different then, Brad?
A little bit different, a little bit unique. I'm not sure that it was successful, but we have here the 3.5 litre Rover V8, which is a great little engine. But I'm not sure it was so great in such a big heavy vehicle, but that's what they did. They did trial it, but obviously it never went into production.
It just didn't quite catch on, did it?
Well, but the thing is, you know, Land Rover always tried different things. Like that was the history of Land Rover. They sort of tried to chase this market, that market, and they did try different things, and it was great that they did that, and some things took off and some things didn't. And this was one of the ones that didn't.
So this V8 obviously was in the Range Rover, the stage 1, but this vehicle obviously weighs a little bit more. What's sort of roughly the weight we're talking about for this vehicle?
Oh, these were designed with a gross vehicle mass of about 6 tonne.
That's a lot.
So that's, you know, pretty much 3 times the weight of a Range Rover Classic.
And these put out about 150 horsepower on a good day?
Well, in injected form in the Range Rover, they were 160 horsepower, but carburetted, they were back around 120, 125.
Yeah, so pretty underpowered for what it was. We're going to have a look around the side of the vehicle though, because it's unique in every way, this vehicle. So we'll head over to the passenger side, or would-be passenger side of the vehicle, because there's something
it's not the passenger side of the vehicle.
There's something unusual there, isn't it? Let's go have a look. So the vehicle's in good condition for its age, Brad, but this looks a little bit wrong. Is it on the wrong side?
Yeah, well, obviously they were, I think they were chasing worldwide markets, and most of the world is left-hand drive.
That is true.
Using a bit of logic, they built it left-hand drive, which was very easy for a Land Rover because they already came left or right-hand drive. So, you know, they probably had to get some bits and pieces in from the UK because this was built here in Australia.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Right. So they probably had to source left-hand steering boxes, you know, and various bits and pieces like that. But I think that sort of ties in with what they were trying to achieve, you know, build a military vehicle that was acceptable worldwide.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously the cab's a bit of a different layout compared to the 110 inch variant of
so the long range patrol vehicle basically had its own unique body, and I'm sure you'll get a wider shot later on. It's a completely different style on the rear with the spare wheel carriers, and the whole cab space, gearbox tunnel, it was all purpose built, and again built here in Australia, actually in Sydney. But many of the features people will recognise. You know, it's the same gear stick as the Parenti or the early County 110, same handbrake lever as a Defender, all the normal military controls, blackout lights, high-low lever. You know, it's all pretty recognisable. Some of them did run a calibrated trip meter for navigation purposes. That was quite important.
Yeah, okay.
So there is actually a lot of Land Rover bits in here.
Yeah, there is. You wouldn't feel out of place if you were going to hop in the cab. And we've got a mounting just out of shot. We'll give you a close-up one on the other side of the vehicle. It's basically a large pole with a flat plate on top. Was that obviously for a gun to be mounted on, or
so obviously, well, it's a military vehicle, so a fighting vehicle.
Yeah.
And in the well, it depended on which unit was using it, but obviously, you know, in any given role, they probably had a 30 cal mounted there. In the back, which I'm sure you'll see shortly, I think they had a 50 cal mounted up on there. But that was all adaptable. To whatever they needed to do.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, we'll have a bit of a look at the back because that's pretty unusual configuration there too, Brad. So yeah, let's go have a look. So at the rear of the vehicle here, Brad, we've obviously got a lot more space than the 110 variant. And as you alluded to before, we've obviously got a mount here for a potential minimi or
probably bigger than a minimi. I'm guessing they probably had a 50 cal on there, but again, it would have varied from unit to unit and military to military as well, depending on which army was using it.
True.
So, but you can also see the gunner's seat there for the for the operator. But a big deal with these, of course, was they're designed for long range, hence the name. So so storage was at a premium. So that whole plate underneath the seat there is covering up a 200 litre fuel tank, and it's got 2 fuel tanks in it. You can see the twin fillers on the side there. These are just all storage bins down the side, but you can see extra jerry can storage there. Obviously much longer in the load bed. This was probably full of stuff. And on the back, of course, you had the rack here for a motorbike.
Wow.
Which I carried as well. So you can see they would have hit their 6 tonne pretty quickly.
Oh yeah, and probably a bit more.
Correct.
You know,
yes.
Yeah, depending on how long they were actually out for. Wow, that's incredible. So I guess how do you come across a vehicle like this? What's KLR's story with this? Because
to be honest, it was almost incidental. It took us a while to sort of piece it together, but ultimately it just turned up in an auction, and it caught our attention. We thought, oh well, let's grab that. That's something a little bit unique.
Yeah.
But it turns out that it did spend quite a bit of time in the UK, sitting in a museum there.
Right.
And at some stage it came back to Australia because, in theory, JRA still owned it.
Yeah.
But it sat in the military museum at Bandiana in New South Wales for quite some time.
Right.
And then from what I understand, when they went through the museum, they decided they only wanted Australian military specific equipment. This didn't quite fit the category, even though it is a little bit of Australian history here, so they decided to sell it.
Wow. And what year is this vehicle? When was it manufactured? Like 89?
Roughly then. So the engine was 80-yard in 1989. There is actually no compliance plate on this, so we can't date it exactly.
Because I guess it's a prototype.
Correct.
So,
that's right. So it was never really registered as such. So it's a little bit hazy on when it was actually done, but from a few people that we've spoken to that know a little bit about the history, it was that sort of late 80s, early 90s, sort of the heyday of Land Rover in Australia.
Now the next question I have to ask, and you're going to love this, how many kilometres does this have on the clock, Brad?
Wow. It's a big number.
It is a big one.
So steady yourself.
So steady that cup of tea.
880 kilometres.
Since new.
And I can understand that because it's very smooth to drive, but it's not exactly overpowered. So I don't think anyone would have wanted to have done big distance in it.
And being a Land Rover, we have to ask the other question. That is the original Speedo in it? Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
But of course, it's difficult to tell that.
It is.
It is very difficult. So again, details are a bit sketchy, but thinking about it with what they were doing with it, where it was essentially just a concept vehicle used for display purposes more than anything else, you know, I think it's realistic mileage.
Yeah, and when you look around the vehicle a little bit closer, you can see it just hasn't had the wear compared to some of the other variants of this vehicle that KLR's actually got.
Correct. And the engine is in pristine condition.
Yeah.
Like, it just runs smoothly, quietly, what we expect from a Rover V8.
Exactly. You wouldn't think of anything less, would you? So that's incredible. And so with it didn't catch on. What sort of happened there with the initial test? Because that's a fascinating story you were telling about me off camera. They piled it up, went off, and did they make it back?
I don't No, well, to be honest, the details are a bit hazy because, again, there's no official documentation that we have anyway.
Yeah.
So I think part of the reason Desert Storm was blowing up at the time, so they were using the equipment they already had. Obviously, the Australian military had this vehicle with the Isuzu turbo diesel, which proved to be very, very successful. And it's only now they're coming out of service, so they had a good long life in Afghanistan and elsewhere. But why this never went ahead, to be honest, don't really know. But I can hazard a guess. It probably wasn't powerful enough. And secondly, I'm going to guess they didn't actually find a potential buyer that was interested enough for the to justify committing any more money to it.
And the fuel consumption was pretty high too.
Oh, it would have been.
Yeah. And being a petrol, even with the 200 litre tank and all the jerry cans that you could possibly have, you'd burn through that pretty quickly.
Correct. And I think, militaries worldwide were changing over to diesel at that point as well, because it would have been difficult to call it a long range patrol vehicle if they couldn't actually get long range out of it.
It doesn't really add up. Well, look, thank you so much, Brad. Thanks for showing us around another incredible Land Rover. And if you want the right parts to get your Land Rover back on the road, see Brad and the team at KLR Automotive. But anyway, we're going to go check out the show, Brad, and we'll catch up with you in the next video. So see you then.